Good morning. Today's topic is nephrotic syndrome. So these are the things we are going to discuss about the nephrotic syndrome. The definition, components, pathophysiology, classification, signs and symptoms, diagnosis and the treatment. After this, we are going to discuss in detail the types of the nephrotic syndrome. So starting with the definition. Nephrotic syndrome is a clinical complex characterized by a number of renal and extrarenal features, most of the prominent of which are proteinuria. Proteinuria in practical will be seeing around more than 3 to 3.5 grams per 24 hours. And then hypoalbuminemia, that is the serum albumin level is very less, and peripheral edema, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, lipiduria, and hypercoagulability. Next, so these are only the components. So heavy proteinuria. So the protein excretion is greater than 3 to 3.5 grams in 24 hours duration, and hypoalbuminemia less than 3 grams per deciliter, and peripheral edema, hyperlipidemia, thrombosis, hypercoagulability, and minimal hematuria, and sometimes hypertension is seen. So this is a normal glomerulus image. So this is a efferent arteriole. This is a efferent arteriole, Bowman's capsule, podocytes, Bowman's space, and the proximal tubule, and the glomerular capillaries. Mesangial cells are also seen. You can see the mesangial cells, which are in green color here. So surrounding mesangial matrix is also present. Then this is a cross section of the glomerulus. So same, this is also the same, but here mesangial cells, mesangial matrix we are able to see, and the fenestrations of the endothelium and the capillary lumen, podocytes, and the visceral epithelium, capsular surface spaces, capsular spaces. This is the main endothelium, basement membrane. This is the basement membrane, and the food processes of the podocytes are able. So main we are in the nephrotic syndrome, the main what are the structures involved are the mesangial cells, mesangial matrix, endothelium, basement membrane, endothelium, the basement membrane, and the food processes of the podocytes. So we have to remember this. So here, this is the blood and the endothelium, basement membrane, the complex signaling, and the cytoskeletal proteins, and this is the food processes. So podocytes, capillary, mesangial angle, same glomerular. This green one is a glomerular, basement membrane, food process, capillary endothelium. Okay, I think this image is not that clear, so this is a clear image of it. So glomerular damage may follow a number of insults like immunological injuries or inherited abnormalities or metabolic stress, other direct injuries, deposits of the other extraneous materials. So this is the pathophysiology of the proteinuria. In healthy individuals, less than 0.1% of the plasma protein may transverse the glomerular filtration barrier. So what are the filtration barriers? Three structures. This is the glomerular epithelium or the podocytes, which is envelope the capillaries with the cellular extensions, that is the food process. In between the food process, there will be the slit, filtration slits. So glomerular capillaries lined by the endothelium that sits on the basement membrane. So the capillary here, these are the podocytes, these are the basement membrane, endothelium. This is the filtration. So three layers, what are the three layers? That is the endothelium, glomerular basement membrane, and the podocytes. These three structures are the glomerular filtration barrier. So in a healthy individual, less than 0.1% of the plasma albumin only transverses it. So the glomerular structure, structural changes that may cause the proteinuria, that due to the damage to the endothelium surface or to the glomerular basement or the podocytes. So the hemodynamics, glomerular hemodynamics, that is hypertension and hyperfiltration, can alter the glomerular permeability. The selectivity of the proteinuria, if it is low, if it does like selectivity means the excretion of the relative low molecular weight protein like albumin or transferrin, it is known as selective proteinuria. While if the excretion is predominantly high molecular weight protein, then it is non-selective proteinuria like IgG, IgM, and it is also related to the relative damage of the glomerular filtrate. So this is the pathophysiology of nephrotic syndrome. So due to etiological factors, we'll discuss about the etiological factors later. So due to the etiological factors, glomerular damage will occur and increased permeability of the glomerular capsule to the protein. That leads to the proteinuria, increased renal catabolism, albumin. So hypoalbuminemia is seen. It leads to decreased plasma oncotic pressure and the compensatory increase of the protein, including the lipoprotein by the liver. So here, due to the hypoalbuminemia, decreased plasma oncotic pressure is seen, and along with that, compensatory synthesis of the protein, including the lipoprotein by the liver is seen. So decreased oncotic pressure we have because of that, fluid escapes into the tissues and leading to the peripheral edema, and the decreased plasma volume due to the same decreased plasma volume, because the fluid is escaping into the tissues, the plasma volume will be decreased, which leads to the decreased filtration rate and increased aldosterone, so leading to the sodium and water retention, leading to the generalized edema. And decreased lipid catabolism due to low level of protein leads to the hyperlipidemia. This is the pathophysiology. These are leads to the symptoms and signs of the nephrotic syndrome. So nephritic syndrome. So the two syndromes which we are going to see are the nephritic syndrome and the nephrotic syndrome. So let us see the difference between the nephrotic and the nephritic syndrome. First, the nephritic syndrome, as I means inflammation of the glomerulus is seen. So what are the presenting like oliguria, hypertension, hematuria. The most common cause is IgA nephropathy. Then nephrotic syndrome. So hypoalbuminemia, hyperlipidemia, proteinuria, and peripheral edema. These are the presenting features of the nephrotic syndrome. So these are the classification. Like nephrotic syndrome includes the acute post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis. So let us not talk about the nephrotic syndrome more. Nephrotic syndrome, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, membranous nephropathy, minimal change disease, amyloidosis, and the diabetic nephropathy. Diffuse proliferative glomerulonephritis and the membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis has the features of both nephritic and the nephrotic syndrome. So it can, so the nephrotic syndrome mechanism is the injury to the podocytes, changed architecture like scarring, deposition of the matrix or the other elements. Whereas nephritic, it's the mechanism is the inflammation, reactive cell proliferation, breakdown in the glomerular basement membrane, and the crescent formation. So these are the SLE involves both nephritic or the nephrotic. While IgA nephropathy, mostly the nephritic is, see, the nephritic, mostly the hematuria is the presenting complaint, whereas in nephrotic, proteinuria is the most main complaint. So minimal change nephropathy, focal or segmental glomerulosclerosis, membranous nephropathy, amyloidosis, and diabetic nephropathy are the nephrotic syndrome. So differentiation between the nephrotic and nephritic syndrome: onset, insidious and abrupt. Edema is more in the nephrotic syndrome compared to the nephritic syndrome. It is due to the hypoalbuminemia and proteinuria. And the blood pressure is mostly normal, but in nephritic syndrome, it is slightly raised. JVP is also low to normal in nephrotic, whereas it is raised in the nephritic. As I said, proteinuria is more in the nephrotic when compared to the nephritic. But hematuria may or may not occur in the nephrotic syndrome, but it is present, compulsorily present in the nephritic syndrome. So red cell casts are absent in nephrotic, present in the nephritic syndrome. Serum albumin levels are low in the nephrotic syndrome and normal and slightly reduced in the nephritic syndrome. So classification. It can be either due to the primary cause or the secondary cause. Primary means being the disease specific to the kidneys, whereas secondary being the renal manifestation of the systemic general illnesses. So we'll see in detail. The primary causes include the minimal change nephropathy. It is seen up around 70 to 90% in the children and 10 to 15% in the adults. Focal glomerulosclerosis, the segmental or focal, 15% in adults we are seeing. Then membranous nephropathy in 30% in adults. Mesangial proliferative glomerulonephritis and the rapid progressive glomerulonephritis are also the primary causes of nephrotic syndrome. So the secondary causes may include diabetes mellitus, lupus, amyloidosis, viral infections like hepatitis B, C, and HIV, and preeclampsia. So signs and symptoms. The early sign of the nephrotic syndrome is the frothy urine. So frothy urine is seen at the presentation. Proteinuria is usually more than 2 grams per 24 hours, or the urine protein by creatinine ratio is more than 2. Then orthostatic hypotension and even shock may develop in the children, but it is usually rare in the adults. Adults may present with hyponormotensive or hypertension. Oliguria and even acute renal failure may develop due to the hypovolemia and diminished perfusion. So it is due to the diminished perfusion, means plasma volume is decreased, so that also leads to the hypovolemia and diminished perfusion, leading to the acute renal failure. Then the other symptoms include anorexia, puffy eyelids, and abdominal pain, wasting of the muscles because due to albumin, low albumin and all. Protein loss is present, edema. And often edema is mobile, detected in the eyelids in the morning and in the ankles after lying down for a long time. Like in the morning only we will be seeing in the ankles also. Focal edema may be the reason for seeking the help for such complaints. Focal edema means in any region, like difficulty in breathing if it is due to laryngeal edema or pleural effusion, substernal chest pain, pericardial effusion, scrotal swelling, swollen knees, swollen abdomen like ascites, abdominal pain from the edema of the mesentery. So these are the focal edemas. So as I said already, so this is the puffiness of the eyelids in the morning, pitting edema over the legs, pleural effusion and the pulmonary edema due to focal edemas like ascites. Hypertension can be seen sometimes, but not very common. Anemia, dyspnea, ESR is elevated, maybe due to infections, anorexias, fatigue, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. These are the common presentations. Metabolic consequences of proteinuria. So the metabolic consequences of the nephrotic syndrome includes infections. So recurrent UTIs can be present, and hyperlipidemia, atherosclerosis, hypocalcemia, bone deformities, and hypercoagulability, hypovolemia. Here hypocalcemia, it can be due to vitamin D deficiency because a renal Injury may lead to the vitamin D deficiency. So these are the metabolic consequences of the nephrotic syndrome if it lasts for a long time. Hypercoagulability, it is due to the excretion of the factors like antithrombin 3, protein C, protein S. These all leads to them, and increase in the production of the coagulation factors by the liver. So this is the diagnostic study for the nephrotic syndrome includes the following: urine analysis, urine sediment examination, 24 hours urine protein measurement, serum albumin, serological studies for any infections or any immunological abnormalities, and renal USG, USG abdomen, and renal biopsy. So these are consequences and their management. Hypoalbuminemia. In this, urine protein loss exceeds the synthesis capacity of the liver. This is a mechanism. So it leads to the reduced oncotic pressure, edema. Diuretics and the low sodium diet should be given, but diuretics should be given cautiously. Avoid sodium retention. So that's why we are giving low sodium diet. It is due to the secondary hyperaldosteronism, edema. And hypercholesterolemia, hyperlipidemia, no specific increase in the non-specific increase in the lipoprotein synthesis by the liver in response to the low oncotic pressure. This leads to the high rate of atherosclerosis. So lipid lowering drugs should be given. Hypercoagulability. So as I said, relative loss of inhibitors of coagulation like antithrombin 3, protein C and S, and increased synthesis of procoagulant factors. So it leads to venous thromboembolism. So consider the prophylaxis in the patient, in all patients with chronic and severe nephrotic syndrome. Infections. So all the infections will be treating because urinary loss of immunoglobulins is present. Pneumococcal infection, consider vaccination. So in the severe nephrotic syndrome, very low, we can consider the combination of the diuretics, not one type of diuretics, but different types of diuretics we can be using. In hypovolemia, salt poor albumin infusions may help. So salt poor albumin infusions can be used in the hypovolemic state. Overdiuresis may risk and leads to the impairment of the kidney function and leads to hypovolemia. For this reason, diuretics should be given very cautiously. So now we'll go into details of each type of the nephrotic syndrome. This is the minimal change disease. First, we are going to see. This is the most common type most commonly we are going to see in the children's, around 70 to 90%, and in adults around 10 to 15%. Also called as lipoid nephrosis or food process disease. It comprises 20% of the nephrotic cases in the adults, as I said, and 80% of the nephrotic cases in the children. The major cause of minimal change disease, it is mostly idiopathic, or it can be in association with systemic diseases or drugs. Drugs include interstitial nephritis induced by the NSAIDs, rifampin, and interferon alpha. Hodgkin's disease and other lymphoproliferative malignancies and HIV can also be in association. So, lab parameters. Microscopic hematuria is present in 20 to 30%, whereas hypertension and renal failure are very rare. In the children, urine contains albumin principally. In the adults, proteinuria is typically non-selective. So light microscopy, whereas in pathology, we will be seeing the light microscopy, no changes we will be able to see. Immunofluorescence, typical, negative for immunoglobulin and C3. Electron microscopy, diffuse emphasizement of the food processes of the visceral epithelial cells. So this is the picture. So this is the normal glomerulus. See, parietal epithelial cells, Bowman's capsule, capillaries, and the food processes we are able to see here. Visceral epithelial cells having the food processes. In the normal, normal we are able to see, whereas in the minimal change disease, the food processes are lost. So the loss of the epithelium food processes we are able to see. This is the pathological feature of the minimal change disease. Electron microscopy. So these are the food processes which are lost in the patient with minimal change disease. Same picture I'm again showing you. This is the normal one, and here the food processes are lost. This is the glomerular basement membrane. This is the capillary lumen. So minimal change disease is highly steroid responsive and carries an excellent prognosis. Approximately 90% of the children and 50% of the adults enter remission following 8 weeks of high dose of oral glucocorticoids. Then the dosage in adults 1 to 1.5 mg per kg body weight of prednisone per day for 4 weeks and followed by 1 mg per kg per day on alternate days for another 4 weeks. And up to in 90% of the adults, the remission if the therapy extended for 20 to 24 weeks. Then the treatment of relapse and the steroid dependent cyclophosphamide and chlorambucil is used. Cyclophosphamide, it can be used around 2 mg per kg for 8 to 12 weeks. Whereas chlorambucil 0.1 to 2 mg per kg per day, the major side effect is the higher incidence of malignancies. So minimal change, this is a brief summary of the minimal change disease. It is called as nil disease, or as I said, the food process disease. 80% incidence in the children, mostly male. Adults, it's seen around 2nd to 3rd decade. Etiology is idiopathic, but systemic association can be present. So it is the destruction of the podocyte food processes, and the clinical features same. The nephrotic syndrome, all the features can be present. The upper respiratory tract recent history can be present. It's having association, which, as I said, Hodgkin's lymphomas like thing. It can overlap with the focal and segmental glomerulosclerosis patient. The lab investigations, so polyuria, selective proteinuria, albuminuria is seen. The pathological, as I said, in light microscopy, it is normal. And in electron microscopy, the focal fusion or the loss of the food processes is seen. So in steroid resistant patient, it can lead to the focal and segmental glomerulosclerosis. Usually it is responsive to the steroids. So the next topic is membranous glomerulonephropathy. The leading cause of it is a leading cause of the idiopathic nephrotic syndrome in the adults, 30 to 40%, with male is to female ratio of 2:1%. So 1. This male predominant. Proteinuria is usually non-selective. Microscopic hematuria can be present in around 50% of cases, up to 50% of cases. Hypertension is in only 10 to 30% of patients it is seen. The conditions associated, it can be idiopathic or it can be associated with any systemic diseases or drugs. So infections like syphilis, malaria, leprosy, filariasis, and in all these conditions, it can be associated with membranous nephropathy. And then systemic autoimmune diseases like SLE, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, Hashimoto's disease, Graves' disease, ankylosing spondylitis, myasthenia gravis, primary biliary cirrhosis. and like carcinoma, breast, lung, colon, stomach, and the esophagus, renal cell carcinomas, neuroblastomas, carotid body tumors, melanoma, it can be seen. So sarcoidosis, diabetes, sickle cell disease, Crohn's disease, GVS, and alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiencies, and Fanconi syndrome. These are the other causes. So pathology. The light microscopy diffuse thickening of the basement membrane is seen without the evidence of the inflammation or cellular proliferation. And immunofluorescence, the granular deposition of IgG, C3, and the other C5, B, and C9 can be seen. So these are the stages. Subepithelial deposits, stage 1. A few small flat electron-based deposits are seen on the epithelial surface of the basement membrane. Then the stage 2 is the spike formation. So spikes protruding from the epithelial surface becomes clearly visible. The spikes extends between the electron-dense deposits and are present in virtually every capillary loop. And stage 3, it's an incorporation of the deposits, and this results in the irregular thickening of the basement membrane. That is, the electron dense deposits become surrounded by and incorporated into the basement membrane. So it leads to the irregular thickening of the basement membrane. Then the stage 4 is the disappearing of the deposits. The deposits incorporate within the basement membrane, lose their electron density. So lucent appearance will be seen in few areas of the basement membrane. So then the stage 5 is the healing phase. The deposits have become completely rarefied, and the basement membrane appears to be returning to the normal condition. These are the stages. So poor prognosis is usually seen in the males, old age, hypertension, severe proteinuria, hyperlipidemia, and impaired renal function. So treatment usually remits spontaneously and completely up to 40% of the patients. So glucocorticoids had failed to show the consistent improvement. Cyclophosphamide, chlorambucil, cyclosporin, rituximab, and transplantation are the treatment. So this is the brief of membranous glomerulonephritis. So it is called epimembranous or extramembranous. Incidence around 40 to 60 years of age. It's usually seen in the 50% of adult nephrotic syndromes. That is a wire loop appearance you are able to see here. And the immune complex deposits, etiology, it is idiopathic and can be associated with infections, drugs, carcinomas, and all other systemic diseases. It is usually 80% asymptomatic. Proteinuria is present in the remaining. Nephrotic syndrome in 80% and asymptomatic proteinuria is seen in around 20%. And microscopic hematuria can be present. So the pathology is the diffused uniform basement membrane thickening with the spikes. And the excellent prognosis is seen in the children. But in adults, sometimes it may end in end-stage renal disease. Then the next one is the focal and segmental glomerulosclerosis. It's a sclerosis. The morphological lesions in this are the sclerosis with hyalinosis involving the portion of fewer than 50% portion or fewer than 50% of the glomeruli on the tissue. If it is less than 50%, it is focal. It is completely involving, it is portions, then it is segmental. So these are the symptoms: nephrotic proteinuria, hypertension, mild renal insufficiency, abnormal urine sediments that contain the red blood cells and the leukocytes, and proteinuria is non-selective in most cases. Etiology, idiopathic, or it can be present in association with the systemic diseases or the drugs like HIV, diabetes. As a consequence of sustained glomerular capillary hypertension, it can also be seen. So these are the conditions in which it is seen. So glomerular nephritis or tubular interstitial nephritis and acquired nephron loss, congenital causes, and the adaptive responses, and the drug abuses. So the pathology, in light microscopy, entrapment of the amorphous hyaline material, and the electron microscopy, evidence of the damage to the visceral epithelium is seen. Then the treatment. First, the course of the first line treatment is the corticosteroid treatment, and the other drugs can be used when the corticosteroid treatment is ineffective, like azathioprine, cyclosporin, tacrolimus, mycophenolate, and high dose of prednisone is clearly more effective than the dosage less than 1 mg per kg per day. Then the third stage is response of focal and segmental glomerulosclerosis to the steroid is much slower in the adults than in the children. So at least it should be used for around 4 months of the full, minimum of 4 months of full dose corticosteroid treatment before considering it is a steroid resistant. So the focal segmental glomerulonephritis, this is the just a brief summary about it. So 10 to 35% of the nephrotic syndrome, its incidence in adults. Etiology is idiopathic or autoimmune. Then the clinical features are nephrotic syndrome, same. And the lab investigations, nephrotic urine, selective protein urea is seen. And the pathology, the podocytes damage, segmental collapse of the glomerulus, increase in the matrix. So here you can see this in the increased matrix, this pink one on. So 50% they may spontaneous remission in around 30%, 50% progression to the chronic renal failure, and 20% rapid progression is. Then the next one is the membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis. This is characterized by thickening of the basement membrane and the proliferative changes on the light microscopy. There are major two types, type 1 and the type 2. Type 1, the hallmark is the presence of the subendothelial and the mesangial deposits on the electron microscopy that contains C3, IgG, IgM, and rarely IgA. It is associated with chronic infections like bacterial endocarditis, HIV, hepatitis B and C, and the SLE, and the malignancies like leukemia and lymphomas it is associated. So this is a presentation. Here we will be able to see the widening of the mesangial and the mesangial interposition, macrophages in the mesangial cells, subendothelial deposits. This is the main presentation. Then the type 2 is an autoimmune disease in which the patients have an IgG autoantibody, C3 nephritic factor that binds to the C3 convertase, the enzyme that metabolizes the C3. So the type 2 is associated with partial lipodystrophy. The poor prognosis is seen then more in type 2 when compared with the type 1. So treatment approach, the patients with the rapid progressive renal failure presents on the histopathology, pulse methylprednisolone therapy followed by oral prednisolone, and cyclophosphamide can be used. So initially in the rapid progression, we have to give the pulse therapy, then followed by oral therapy. So patients with microscopic hematuria and proteinuria less than 3 and normal renal function should be followed up for every 3 months, and they should be treated with AEC inhibitors. The patient with chronic renal failure should be managed conservatively. And the patients with HCV associated should be treated with interferon alpha. An immunosuppressant agent should not be given. So this is the brief summary of membranoproliferant. Incidence in child and young adults. Etiology usually chronic, any chronic infections, SLE, cirrhosis. And the clinically nephrotic in 50%. So it also has a nephritic component. So acute nephritic syndrome in 20%. Hypertension and renal insufficiency are the clinical presentations. So as I said, C3 nephritic factor, circulating immune complexes are the lab. And pathology, diffuse proliferative with thickening of the glomerular capillary walls. So diffuse coarsely granular C3 and IgG deposits are seen along the basement membrane. So end-stage renal disease may be developed within 10 years in 50% of the children and in 80% of the adults. Then the next one is the diabetic nephropathy. So this is a secondary causes of nephrotic syndrome, diabetes. Nephropathy complicates 30% of cases of type 1 diabetes mellitus and approximately 20% of cases of type 2 diabetes. Then the risk factors are hyperglycemia, systemic hypertension, glomerular hypertension, hyperfiltration, proteinuria, cigarette smoking, hyperlipidemia, and the other causes can be present. These are the other risk factors. Then diabetic nephropathy is usually diagnosed on the clinical basis without any renal biopsy. And the supportive clues are in ultrasound, renal will be finding the normal sized or enlarged kidneys, and evidence of proliferative renal retinopathy and bland urine sediments are present. Retinopathy is found in 90 to 60% of the patients with type 1 diabetes, and 90 in type 1 diabetes and 60% in the type 2 diabetes mellitus who develop nephropathy. So usually by the time nephropathy presentation is seen, retinopathy is developed mostly in the type 1 and type 2. More in type 1. So this is the pathophysiology. So hyperglycemia leads to the renal hemodynamic changes and leading to the increase of insulin growth factor 1, TGF beta, and vascular endothelium growth factor increases, and these leads to the efferent arterial constriction and glomerular hypertension. It leads to the glomerular hypertrophy and sclerosis. Then the activation of the renal angiotensin and aldosterone system that leads to the increased angiotensin and aldosterone, leading to the podocyte injury, proteinuria, and finally leading to the diabetic nephropathy. And the ischemic and the inflammation due to hyperglycemia can also lead to the same podocyte injury, proteinuria. And the oxidative stress, this also leads to the tubular interstitial fibrosis, tubular atrophy, mesangial cell expansion. So these all leads to the final diabetic nephropathy. So the glomerular hypertension, so hypertrophy and sclerosis is seen. This is due to the efferent arterial constriction, then podocyte injury that leading to the proteinuria, and tubular interstitial fibrosis, tubular atrophy. These all leads to the finally same diabetic kidney disease. Then the treatment. Aim is to control the blood sugars, systemic blood pressure, and the glomerular capillary blood pressure. So AC inhibitors and ARBs are the drug of choice for both systemic and the intraglomerular hypertension. Then the next one is the renal amyloidosis. So glomeruli are involved around 75 to 90% of the patients, and hypertension is present in around 20 to 25%. Renal size is usually normal or slightly enlarged. A minority of patients presents with renal failure. Rectal biopsy and the abdominal fat biopsy reveals the amyloid deposits in about 75% of the patients, and they may no need to go to renal biopsy. In the renal biopsy, the early pathological changes are mesangial expansion by amorphous hyaline material and thickening of the glomerular basement membrane. When stained with Congo red, then these deposits show apple green birefringence and under polarized light. The electron microscopy reveals non-branching extracellular amyloid fibrils. So this is the nephrotic syndrome. So the nephrotic syndrome, the membrane becomes permeable to the proteins, that leads to the leaking of the proteins into the urine and lacking of the proteins in the blood, leading to the weight gain, puffy face, ascites, proteinuria, hyperlipidemia, edema, and hypoalbuminemia. The treatment is low salt diet, low corticosteroids, and the prevention of the infection. Thank you.